Wow, that was short. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here again. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking to Janhendrik Oosthuizen from RISE and ReIMAGINE. It's going to be an amazing show. And those of you who have any doubt in how to rebrand yourself and how to actually ensure that your marketing and your strategies are correct for your business, this is the show for you. So welcome to the show. It's really great to have you here. Today we have our co-hosts, and I'd really like to welcome them again. Mana is a successful business person from Pretoria. She's an insurance broker and a short-term insurance broker specializing in fleets and commercial insurance. So welcome to the show, Mana. Then we have got Glenn Jones from Mentorus. He ensures that you have a purpose in your life and you understand what that purpose is. And I only recently found my purpose, and that is to give expertise of voice, which is exactly what we're doing here today. And then we've got Russell John Fagan, who is a sales expert. And as he says, you can actually learn how to be a salesman. You don't need to be born a salesman. So if you want to learn how to be a salesman, contact Russell. And then we've got Wilhelm Lombard. Wilhelm Lombard was an energy coach, but that got confused with all the outages. Now he is a performance manager, and he makes sure that your teams perform to their utmost through the mechanisms that he uses. So welcome to the show. Really great to have you all here. And we have our special guest, Janhendrik Oosthuizen. Welcome to the show, Jan. He likes to be called JH or Hendrik, Janhendrik, not Jan or Hendrik. So let's just make sure we have that in mind. It's really a privilege to have you here on the show. And I mean, you're an expert in brand marketing. And, I actually did a post yesterday on how you've actually differentiated yourself and your business. And it's two separate things. So RISE is yourself as a keynote speaker, and then etiquette. And what's another name? is ReIMAGINE, yeah. So is basically your business, and it's fantastic to see how you've actually branded that. And we all need to take a lesson from you. So Janhendrik, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself because I don't think anyone can do it better than you. So over to you.
Perfect. And thank you, David. Good morning to Mana, Glenn, Wilhelm, Russell. Great to be here with this panel. And if we jump off, I'll start with the short version. I've spent 20 plus years starting, building, breaking, and rebuilding businesses in South Africa. Through that, I founded Etiquette, which is a creative consultancy based in Pretoria, and it is running since 2007. Now, what happened along the way is that I started to notice the same pattern in every business I worked with, including my own business. The businesses that were growing faster were often the ones closest to breaking, and not because they were doing something wrong, but because they were succeeding faster than what their systems, their people, and their alignment could carry. And we started to call that phenomena growth chaos. Now, with regards to that, we took this concept of growth chaos and we broke it into two areas. First and foremost, from a business point of view, and the work that we do in the boardroom is through what we call the ReIMAGINE toolkit. And that is basically a diagnostic methodology that helps founders and leader teams to find the real issues beneath the visible ones. And then from a personal point of view, I go to stages and I do keynotes speaking on specifically the concept of RISE. And RISE for me is a platform built on the conviction that leadership is not scarce, it's abundant, and it's sitting in every team, family, and community. Now, if we delve a little bit more into the ReIMAGINE toolkit, it basically boils down to the following. It's a switcher of 6 diagnostic and strategic tools. We always start off when we work with our clients with what we call the ReIMAGINE brand, and that helps a business to define who it actually is in the market. ReIMAGINE Activate turns that identity into a go-to-market execution. ReIMAGINE Align, or which I call the wheel, is the diagnostic that surface where a business is breaking across 6 different tension areas. And there we go in and we look at a company from a direction, promise, trust, control, conduct, and growth perspective. And then we go on to what we call ReIMAGINE as a service, which embeds that methodology as an ongoing strategic partnership. ReIMAGINE design thinkings brings structured innovation into a business and into business challenges. And then lastly, we added ReIMAGINE Africa, which is the newest tool, where we help international companies to build a credible and trusted presence in South Africa and the continent. Now, what is very important is the deeper I went into business alignment, the more I realized that growth chaos doesn't only live inside organizations. It lives inside people too, inside all of us. And that is the gap between where you are and where you know you could be. That tension between potential and reality. And that I see as personal growth chaos. And rising to your full potential requires the same discipline as scaling a business. It requires honest diagnostics, structural alignment, and of course, the courage to act before you really feel ready. All of that takes us to the whole platform around RISE, and that's there where RISE was born. And it is built on the conviction that leadership is not scarce, it is abundant. We've got leadership sitting everywhere, in every team, every family, every community. And through that, I talk about something that is positioned as atomic leaders. And an atomic leader for me is ordinary people who lead in their own microspheres of influence and trigger a chain reaction that no single iconic leader could manufacture. And for me, it's so important and so interesting if we look at atomic leaders. It's one person's courage that gives another person permission to act as well. It's one act of ownership that makes the next one easier. And when enough atoms trigger each other, the whole culture starts to shift. And for me, that is in a nutshell what this is about. From a personal point of view, focusing on the other side, focusing on ReIMAGINE, and through all of that, tackling growth chaos from a business as well as from a personal point of view. And that is me.
Wow. Welcome to you know, one of the questions that I've got, and you know, this is something that always comes to my mind. You start your topic about the fact that ordinary people are real leaders. And you've just spoken a little bit about that, atomic leaders. Can you maybe go a little bit more in depth about what you mean by that and why you believe that, you know, an ordinary person, any ordinary person can be a leader?
David, I think it is since our childhood, we've been told this story about leadership, and I think that story is fundamentally broken. The story says that leadership only belongs to the iconic leaders, to the Mandelas and the Gandhis, the CEOs on the magazine covers. And if you're not one of these iconic leaders, like everyone else around us, your job is just to follow, to watch, and to hope. And most probably to hope and wait till someone else leaves before you can stand up to be a leader. Now, the problem with this story is that it doesn't just fail the spectators. In other words, the millions of capable people sitting in the stand, convinced leadership isn't for them. It fails the iconic leaders too. We load impossible expectations onto a handful of people, and we crush them under the weight of our own collective application. And then we wonder why they crack. Now, my work is built on the opposite conviction. Leadership is not scarce, it's abundant. It's sitting in every team, in every family, in every community. What's missing is not capability, it's permission. Now, the world will not be saved by iconic leaders. It will be saved by ordinary people who refuse to wait for permission to lead.
You talk about permission. How does one actually get that permission? Is it permission from someone else or permission from yourself that you need that to have that confidence and the courage to make decisions and to communicate to others about where you think that they should go to or where they should be going?
And that's so important from a permission point of view. And the big thing there is just we are taught that we have to wait for permission. And I call that the permission trap. Now, people absorb this message, and we told this permission trap story from school, from the corporates that we work in, from culture, from media. That leadership is something granted to you. It's a title, it's a promotion, it's an invitation. And until you receive that, your job is literally to wait. And I feel that creates a world of people who are ready but motionless. They are very capable, but they're passive. They have the skills, the insight, and the energy, but they do not have the title. So what do? They wait. Now, for SME owners, it really shows up as, I'm not big enough to lead my industry. And typically for an entrepreneur, it is, who am I to speak up? And for an employee, it might be, this is not my place. That thought right there is the cage. And to get out of that cage, it is a decision that lies on your side. It's up to you to stand up and say, I don't have to wait to get permission. I can be a leader in my own sphere of influence. And I think that is the challenge.
I like what you're talking about. You know, one of the things that I see in my limited experience of being in business, and I've been in business for the last 40 years, is is that ability of the person to actually take leadership and see where the opportunity is to take leadership. And perhaps that's what you refer to as the growth chaos. And obviously that's a new term for me, growth chaos. I know what chaos is and growth, I know what it is, but combining those two words, what does that mean for you in respect of actually, small businesses and those people that are actually taking charge of teams, et cetera, et cetera?
David, growth chaos is that tension that emerges when your business external momentum outpaces its internal coherence. So in plain language, you're growing faster than what the business can carry. Now, you see it so often. Ambition starts to outpace capability. Promises outpace delivery. And what happens is the market wants more than what the system internally can hold. And here is the thing most founders miss. The most dangerous moment is not failure. It is success that arrives before the system is ready for it. And I've watched this in a dozen of companies. A business lands a breakthrough client. It opens a new market. It doubles its headcount. And within 18 months, the wheels start coming off. And not because growth was bad, but because the structure underneath it was never built to hold that growth. Very important as well is most businesses don't break because they fail to grow. They break because they grow before they have built the alignment to carry it.
Well, I can understand that. When I was at Sun International and we were acquiring casino licenses, it would be a long process to actually get the license. And then within a few months, we had to actually, and I'm literally talking about a few months, we had to actually then go along and hire people and so on. And there was chaos in actually doing that. And yet we still did it. But I think it was the leadership that came into play to actually make sure things happened. I'm going to hand over to Mana. And Mana, from your point of view, how do you see this whole issue panning out with regard to growth?
I was actually thinking this morning about advice that was given to me by a client friend years ago when I started my business. And she had been in the transport industry, in a woman in a men's world. So, and she made it. And the one piece of advice she gave me at the time was that you should be very careful and mindful on how you grow, meaning how fast or how slow you grow. Because if you grow too fast, your internal system might not be able to keep up with that, and hence you're going to have a big problem in providing the service that you promised. So what would your advice be? And what are the warning signs, to see, okay, I'm growing too fast, and what am I going to do? How should you position yourself as a young, new entrepreneur on growth?
And Mana, you are right. I think that is so important at the end of the day. It is really to be aware of the early warning signs and to know when to take action. Now, for me, there are 3 symptoms that I see repeatedly, and they're almost never the ones people talk about openly. Now, the first symptom that is so often the leading symptom is the founder bottleneck, where every decision, every escalation, every strategic question flows through 1 or 2 people. The business literally cannot think without them. The second symptom that comes across so often is what we call promise drift. The marketing starts to promise a Rolls Royce, while operations deliver a VW or a Toyota. Now, the gap between what the business says and what it can actually deliver widens until someone notices. And unfortunately, it's usually the client that notices. And thirdly, we talk about cultural erosion. The values that built the company, the energy, the loyalty, the sense of mission, dissolves as new people join who never knew the original story. Now, the culture becomes a slide in a deck rather than a force in the building. And it is, if a founder that's watching this recognize any of these 3, that is your early warning sign. And that is what we can use as a diagnosis tool to say it's time to look deeper and to start looking at how to fix things before growth forces you to fall apart.
Yeah, and when at that stage, I mean, it's almost too late to fix. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I would have arguments in my head, and the same with ideas and business proposals, or how I'm going to do my business this week, or how we're going to change. And you have this ideas all in your head, instead of actually say it when you need to say it, before it becomes a problem, And I think women are maybe more prone to that, but that's often how I find myself, as I've got all these ideas in my head, but and I need to get it out of my head, and keeping it inside actually creates a bottleneck, right? So nothing goes through. So how do you get yourself to actually go and sit down and do and more about just the picture or the story that you have in your head? What advice would you give an entrepreneur or business owner that got stuck into this, idea that's in my head, but I don't know how to actually get it into action?
And I think it's important what you refer to, Mana, is the bottleneck situation, where the leader, the founder, becomes that absolute bottleneck. All the information, all the ideas sit with the leader, but it doesn't flow into the team. And for me, that is very important. The moment when you become the only person who can answer the question, any question, when the team waits for you before they act, when the client only trusts the relationship with you personally, when the business can't run for 2 weeks without you, then you're no longer leading the business. You are constraining it. And all of that knowledge that's in your head, everything that you want to bring to life, you struggle to do that because of that bottlenecked environment. Now, the very qualities that builds a company, your vision, your drive, your ideas, your hands-on involvement, becomes the ceiling that prevents it from growing. Now, I think the biggest problem and the biggest challenge is that shift from a founder-driven to a system-driven transition in business. And I think it is specifically what we look at when we talk about the ReIMAGINE toolkit as well. And we call it control. We start to look at, are the systems strong enough to carry your ideas, to carry what you want to do and where you are going? Or is this business still just running on spreadsheets and handshakes that worked when it was a third of its current size? So that system thinking become more important, specifically as a inspiring and entrepreneur. You start looking at all of these ideas and you don't know where to take, where to leave, where the focus must be and where the focus mustn't be. And at the end of the day, systems will help to put all of that into place.
I could not agree with you more. A couple of years we bought into a system that keeps my business running, so I can literally go away for a month, and when I come back, everything will still be. And I think it's very difficult when you start a business to not keep everything for yourself and being too scared that somebody else is gonna, be better than you. It's actually, I found that to have somebody in your team that are better than you, has better skills than you, it's actually an advantage to your business. In practical terms, then what would you advise be to an owner? How do you protect yourself when the growth starts to stretch your business, your cash flow, culture, client promises, and people or systems? What would your advice be? Because systems are expensive, especially when you're a startup. Because I found it. I had to work my business for about 3 or 4 years before I could really afford a proper system. But there is value in proper systems.
Absolutely. And I think if you ask me what is the one thing that you as a founder must protect first, I would say client promise. Everything else that you mentioned can be rebuilt. But the reality is, once the markets stop to trust you, and stop trusting that you will deliver what you said you would, that recovery is slow and very expensive. In other words, protect the promise first, then build the systems to carry it, then rebuild the culture around people who understand both the promise as well as the culture.
I do have one small question. In my world, I'm very dependent on the service I provide to my client, because I'm very dependent on the service I get from my insurer, for instance. How do I protect that relationship if something goes south from the insurance side, but it wasn't really my fault? How do you protect that physically?
I think it's all about the relationship. Clients are very forgiving when it comes to knowing that someone is fighting on their behalf. We forgive if the insurer doesn't do what they have to do. As long as I know Mana is there, Mana is fighting for me, she has my back. So there's problems with the insurer. It happens. All of us know it happens, and all of us know the low levels of service delivery in the insurance industry. But for me, the make or break is knowing that I don't have to fight those fights. There are someone fighting it on my behalf, and that makes the world's difference.
Thank you, Janhendrik.
Yeah, I like what you just said about that, because that's so true. When you are dependent on another service provider to provide the service and you're the intermediary, that's a very good point there, Janhendrik. I'm going to ask Glenn. Glenn's got some questions. Glenn, you are a Map for Life coach, and you look at purpose. And I think RISE is something that's really important here of what Janhendrik's doing. Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. And JH, very interesting discussion so far, I must admit. I think I'm going to have a coffee date with you and we can sit and chat for hours. My first question relates to these high-performing people, and we get plenty of them. I think some of them are on this panel, in fact. But there's a particular thought that they have, and that thought is, I should be further than this. I should have made more money by now. I should have grown the business further. I should have scaled better, etc., etc. How do you help people distinguish between healthy ambition and probably what we would call a wound that keeps driving them forward?
Glenn, I think this is the question I'm most personal about, because it's exactly this sentence that I carry myself. And it is this challenge that brought me to the point of creating ReIMAGINE and what ReIMAGINE is all about. Now, this whole question of I should be further by now, why am I not as far as I hoped I will be? It has two versions. On the one hand, there is what I call the compass version. And the compass version says, I'm not yet where I want to be, and I'm going to keep moving. Now, this version is useful. It creates energy, and it's forward-looking. On the other hand, there is the wound version, which says, I'm not yet where I should be, and that means something is wrong with me. Now, this version produces anxiety, fear, and frantic activity that might feel productive, but which is actually avoidance. Now, it's backwards looking and fixating on time lost rather than time available. Now, most high performers carries both of these simultaneously. And what I see is the wound masquerades as the compass. And the daily discipline of rising, of truly and really rising, is to learn to tell these two apart. And it is true, some mornings I will wake up with the compass. Some mornings I will wake up with the wound. Now, the practice is noticing which one is speaking before I let it drive. Rising is not the absence of doubt. It's the ability of carrying it without being broken by it.
Brilliant. Love that. Excellent. Well said. Fantastic. Okay. My next question is really all about purpose and planning, which is what I'm about. And how important is it for a person to define who they are before they define what they do?
Sure, Glenn, I think that is everything. And it is at the same principle at every scale, which is why your purpose lens is so important here. Let's start and talk about a person. If you don't know who you are, every opportunity looks like your opportunity. You say yes to everything. You scatter your energy. You build a career that looks impressive from the outside, but truly it feels hollow from the inside. If we look at it from a business point of view, it is kind of identical. If the business doesn't know who it is in the market, if it chases every client, every trend, and truly every opportunity, it ends up standing for nothing. And that is exactly what the ReIMAGINE brand tool is built to address. Asking, who are you? Not what do you sell, but who are you? And there's a difference. And the focus on that, not saying what do you sell, but rather asking, who are you? That makes the world's difference. And it boils down to identity before expression, purpose before strategy. And truly, in the words of, it's being before doing. Get it in the wrong way around, and you'll build something that you just can't sustain, or that can't sustain itself.
Absolutely. It just fascinates me, what you're talking about, because I speak to so many people about this concept around purpose, and it is exactly what you're speaking about. That identity is so important. My next question actually leads exactly off from what you've just discussed now, the concept around your work seems to suggest that identity must come before expression. So what happens when people build careers, brands, businesses without first actually understanding their own deeper purpose?
If they start to build something that succeeds by external measures, but breaks them internally. And we see that so often as well. And I've seen it in my own environment. I've seen this with founders who built companies that's worth millions, but they still feel empty. In executives who climb the ladder and reach the top only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. And oh, we love those wrong walls. Now, without purpose as the foundation, growth becomes consumption. You consume energy, you consume relationships, health, meaning. in the service of a goal that was never truly yours, that was a different war. Now, that is growth chaos at a personal scale. And we also, from a business point of view, the ReIMAGINE toolkit, look at that as its first tension point as well, direction. And it's exactly asking that question. Does everyone know where this is going? And do they agree on why?
Fantastic. Brilliant. Oh, I'm definitely going to have a coffee date with you. Love to chat more about this. Last question from my side. I so believe that many people believe that they have the potential, that they could even know they have the potential, but they don't know how to actually implement, how to actually step into it. And they don't really have clear direction. What would you say to them?
Glenn, that's a very interesting one. And I would say, if you're in that position, truly start with what makes you angry. Not frustrated, but angry. The thing in the world that you cannot accept. Very often people live in the anger, not in the dream. The dream comes later, but the anger tells you where the work is that you need to focus on.
Very interesting. Never thought about it from that perspective before. So that's really interesting. Wonderful. Great stuff. Thank you, Judge. I appreciate that. Back to you, David.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, anger. Start with anger. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great wisdom there. I'm going to ask Wilhelm, in leadership, obviously it involves teams, it involves groups of people. And one of the most important things, obviously, is communication. And I think this is where Wilhelm comes to light with his team performance that he does and the teaching that he does with regard to making sure that teams perform to the utmost. Over to you, Wilhelm.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Janhendrik. So far, it's so interesting, and I really love this conversation. Now, just going back to leadership, I find leadership now, especially in Africa, maybe it's more politics. It's a matter of John Maxwell say leadership is all about influence, but often the influences are not the leaders, but it's like the tail that wagging the dog, that type of thing. And how do we sort of overcome that in Africa, where it's more politics and not really leadership? Leadership for me starts with personal leadership first. You must first be a leader of yourself before you can become an interpersonal or a professional leader. But this is always, for me, a quite a big challenge because of the politics involved. Maybe you can help us with that.
And I love the question, Wilhelm, because at the end of the day, what it boils down to is that whole dependency on iconic leaders. You spot on with regards to, you have to give yourself a permission to lead first. You as a person needs to develop your own leadership before looking at anything else. Now, what we do too often is we wait for that knight in shining armor. We wait for something to come and change everything around us. We are the spectator. We don't do what we're supposed to do. And by that inaction, we create an environment where politics thrive. And I think we give the stage to politics, both national, international politics, but also corporate politics, just because we don't take action, because we don't believe we are the leaders. Only if you are playing the political game, you can be a leader. Within a company, within a country, wherever. And I think it's to change that mentality. It is not about, don't give a stage to people that play politics. Take leadership and start playing a leadership role, because then we enable people that thrive on politics, because we take the leadership. We don't wait for them to be the iconic leaders. And then we are very disappointed when it becomes a political conversation and not a leadership conversation.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and it's about power. I think the biggest problem is the motive. People, the motive is wrong. They want power, they want position, but they don't really want to take the responsibility to make the system work and for the benefit of other people as well, and so on. Okay, thank you for that. Now, when growth outpaces alignment, teams often become busy but disconnected. What does growth chaos look like inside a team?
Well, Helen, I think you work with teams every day, so you'll recognize this. The team is busier than it has ever been. Meetings are back to back. Everyone is working late, long hours, weekends, but nothing strategic is moving forward. There is motion, but without progress. Now, that's where growth chaos are identified at the team level. The external demand have outpaced the team's ability to coordinate. People are typically executing their own tasks, but nobody is holding the bigger picture. Nobody's bringing everything together. And then we start seeing communication breaking down. We see assumptions replacing conversations. And the best people, the ones who you care about the most, starts to burn out or they leave because they feel that something is wrong, but they cannot name it. And that effect of burnout on the next level is something that we see so often, and it is so dangerous. And for me, the frustrating part is these people know that something is wrong, but oh, how they struggle. They just can't give a name to it. What they are feeling is the gap between what the team is asked to carry and what it's been structured to hold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working on burnout prevention for over 20 years already. I'm doing research on that, and I find that teams, they just don't have the petrol in the tank anymore. They're just tired, and they go through the motions. They are on this treadmill running, but move nowhere, no movement. And it's a serious problem. And when teams are in that phase, they just try to survive, and they never thrive. And that's what you actually, it boils down to, are you ready before the time? Because if you're not ready and you don't have the muscle to take up the new challenges, then things will not work. My last question, you referred to areas like direction, promise, trust, control, conduct, and growth. Which of these usually breaks first inside a small and or growing business?
In my experience, it's almost always either trust or direction, and they are interconnected. Direction breaks when the founder holds the vision alone and assumes everyone shares it. And oh, we see that so often. The strategy only exists in one person's head. Now the team is executing, but they are not aligned. They're just busy. They're just very busy. And again, that's what leads to the burnout. Now, the moment direction cracks, trust will follow, because people start making decisions based on assumptions instead of shared understanding. And when those assumptions clash, trust erodes. Now, the tragedy is that it's invisible until it's a crisis. The business from the outside looks functional. Revenue might even be growing. But reality is underneath, the team is fragmented. And by the time the founder notices this, the best people have already mentally checked out or left the company.
Yes. Yeah, you see, and then at the end of the day, when there's distrust, there's just blaming. And blame, I always say, blame is be lame. Then you lose the energy. And at the end of the day, all the monkeys are back on the founder's back, and they try to do everything, and they can't, because it's actually burning them out as well. Thank you, Janhendrik, for your insights. Yes, I think we can talk a lot about this. We are sort of in the same game, and I love it. Thank you very much for your insights. Over to you, David.
Thank you. Thanks for those questions. Russell is a sales master, and I think one of the things about leadership is actually getting your sales team to actually drive those actually sales and get those leads in and actually turn them into reality. And I think this is where leadership really is paramount. Russell, I'm sure you've got some questions for Janhendrik regarding this.
Yeah, I would like to start with a statement first. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and you're touching on it, David, with the sales team, is that I think true leadership is more than a position. True leadership is, and it sounds lame, but just take a moment and think about the words I'm choosing. True leadership is actually taking the lead. It's being responsible for leading in your sphere of influence or in your role. And that's where I've seen sales teams have changed when they understand that they are leaders within their sales team. They are leaders within their environment. They are leaders within their approach to their clients. And when they start taking that leadership role seriously, they then start becoming responsible and accountable. So my question, and I see time is catching up to us, so I'm going to keep it short, but short and sweet. For entrepreneurs and SMEs, Janhendrik, when we're looking at ReIMAGINE, the approach that you have, how does that, or how can you help companies, SME companies, to communicate more clearly their value? Because when we are in the sales environment, what we are selling is outcomes, but the outcome has to be valuable, and that is then aligned with your company, with your corporate identity or the ethos of your company. So yeah, for me, it's about what does ReIMAGINE, what is the focus point when it comes to delivering that message, that communication of value to the clients?
I think with regards to that, what is so important is to make sure that you have a message, and it boils down to that, and that everyone in the company, the whole sales team, the founder, everyone use the same hymn sheet to sing from. And we do a lot of work in those environments because we see it so often that if you ask one person, if you ask the founder, what do you sell? What is your USP? What makes you different? He has one story. And if you speak to a salesperson, you get something that's completely unaligned. So the first step there is to make sure that you are clear on your story and what that story stands for, and make sure that everyone buys into the same story and people don't start selling their own version of the story. And when we talk about that story specifically, there's a very interesting way of approaching it. And Rich Mulholland is the one that's the driver behind this, where he says as well, it's understand the dragon. In other words, your clients have a dragon that threatens them at night. They wake up 2 o'clock in the night in a pool of sweat because of this dragon that's attacking their companies and their businesses. Now, what do? We go into the market and we sell on our sword. We say that, listen, we've got the best sword, and the sword is our service and our product. This thing is the best you can get. It's got this bells, this whistles, it's got all of these specs. Buy my sword. At the end of the day, the client is not interested in the sword. He's interested in that dragon that's threatening him. So from a storytelling point of view, approach that client and address the dragon. Don't sell with the sword. Yes, you'll do that later on in the sales process. But to start that conversation, to create that lead, talk to the dragon. Tell them you will slay this dragon. Because me as a client, I really don't care how you're going to kill the dragon, whether it's a sword, a gun, a ketty, just get this dragon out of my life. So sell me on the dragon. And when I am confident that you can kill my dragon, then start telling me about your sword. But lead with the dragon and bring the sword in later in the story.
Yeah, we talk about selling the outcome and not the vehicle. The outcome is what the client wants to hear. How you get to that is actually irrelevant in the beginning. My second question is based on what you were saying earlier, is that when a business grows faster than the system and people, where do we usually see the first cracks, the first breakdown? Do we see it in the sales? Do we see it in customer service or in experience, in leadership, delivery? Where do we normally identify? And where will a owner of a business, if he has to go and be real, just take 5 minutes and just look at his business and evaluate it, what cracks should he be looking for that shows him that his business is growing faster than his capability?
I think with regards to that, specifically in a sales environment, what we see so often is it coming through in promise drift. And we notice that in so many environments, what you promise and what you deliver is not aligned anymore. Now, if you reach the point where that happens, that is fatal because it doesn't happen immediately. And that's what makes it so very dangerous. Promise drift kills slowly. And here is basically how it works. The market gets bigger. The website looks amazing. The pitch deck is polished, but the delivery hasn't kept pace. Externally, the vision, or externally, the picture is great, but internally, things fall apart. The client buys that Rolls-Royce promise, but it receives the Toyota experience. And what we see is, first time around, what happens? The client gives you grace. The second time it happens, they just don't come back anymore. And then the third time, they start to tell 10 people about what is happening. And that for me is fatal, because in a referral economy, which is everything for SMMEs and small businesses, promise drift doesn't just lose you one client, it poisons the entire referral chain. And Bob Burke from the Go Giver methodology taught me one thing, and that's that your network will only refer you if they trust that you will make them look good. Promise drift destroys that trust, and it destroys it at the root. The market doesn't punish bad products. It punishes broken promises.
Perfect. David, I see the time's running out, so up back to you. Thanks, Janhendrik. Much appreciated.
Sure. There's some fantastic gems being dropped there. Thank you so much. Thanks for those questions, Russell, and thanks, Janhendrik, for answering them. For those of you who would like to be part of this process, we every week we are basically here. We are driven to give expertise a voice, and if you'd like to become a member of Vision 2026 and get updates of who's going to be next and when the show is and so on and so forth, and to be reminded, please scan that QR code and become a member. There's no charge to it. All you need to do is scan, become a member, join the WhatsApp group, and then you're a member. You can also go along and follow us on and subscribe on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We're both on there. And we also have the Future Forward newsletter that comes out every week. So come and join us there. And for those who are on the show, please go along and put a comment in either Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. And Janhendrik's actually going to be giving a giveaway, a free keynote session for somebody who actually comments. So please go and do that. Go and put a comment in. I see there are some questions that have come through. So maybe we could just go and address some of these questions. There are quite a few here. The first one is quite a long one. I'm going to put it on the screen so we can all look at it. and I'm not sure who this is from, but thank you for this question. I've seen business owners, founders in this situation, only a small percentage cross over to a space where everything does not depend on themselves. It usually takes them hitting a wall before they even consider looking inside themselves and getting into a place that you mentioned. Most get stuck in the circle. They know how to get, but they don't know how to get out. They know that what issues are, but they keep breaking things, and this is so true. And they need help. Janhendrik, do you want to answer that question? How do you cross these barriers or break through them to start making a success?
I think what's so important then, I always refer back to that very well-known saying from the saying that a problem cannot be fixed in the same paradigm that it was created, said by Einstein. And I think this is what's happening here so often. You are so caught in the situation, you're so caught in the paradigm. You cannot see the woods for the trees or the trees for the woods, whichever one comes first. And what is important is you need to get to a point where you start to change the paradigm, get out of the paradigm. And thank you for this remark, because it is as if you explained to me in my previous situations. You are so caught up and you try so hard, but you still stay the problem in the situation. And that is why we are so passionate to come in and say, listen, just stand still, just breathe. Let's take this conversation out of the fire killing, out of the jumping from crisis to crisis environment. And we will come in as a soundboard. You need someone that can come in from a fresh perspective, that can ask the questions that you are afraid to ask. Sometimes to unite a team and to get everything flowing through all the levels, it helps for someone else to come in and repackage your knowledge, repackage what you say. And for me, it's a good example. My son is 10 years old. Now, he's a typical 10-year-old kid. He knows everything. He's got all the answers, and he's got a lot to say to dad. So if I ask him to do something, if I tell him to do something, it's always, but why, but how? But good grief, if he goes to school and his teacher says it must be done this way, then come hell or high water, Adrian believes his teacher. Daddy can say the same, but daddy knows nothing. The teacher says it, that's gospel. Now, I think the same thing is true in businesses. We are so used to one another's rhetoric that you just need someone else to come in and break that rhetoric and just approach the same message, but from a different angle.
Sure. Thank you so much. I've got another question, and this is from Tian. Thanks, Tian. JH, do you think people don't know how to activate themselves as atomic leaders because they have not figured out their own identity or purpose yet?
Absolutely. And for me, it is when we talk about atomic leaders, that is so important. Figure out where you want to lead. And to do that, to understand where and how you can lead in your own sphere of influence, you need to understand your own identity and purpose. And that is why, and as it came out in the conversations, why it's so important to leadership starts with the self. Understand who you are, understand what you want to achieve. As long as you do what is being told, as long as you do what other people expect from you, you cannot be a leader. And for me, that is so important. It is, all of us are leaders. That's not the problem. It's not a situation of you're a born leader, and if you're not a born leader, you're just a follower. All of us are leaders. Why don't we stand up and become leaders? Because of this. We're not sure of our identity. We're not sure of our purpose. And that's why we see people that are clear on their purpose, immediately they turn into leaders, because now they've got a foundation from which they can perform and from which they can start implementing change around them.
Sure. Thank you so much. We've run out of time. We try and finish by 1:45, and I see it's already 5:02. So we've got a few minutes left, and before 9 o'clock, which is our total cutoff. I'm going to ask each of our co-hosts what their biggest takeaway is. I'm going to start with Mana. Mana, what's your biggest takeaway from your point of view, and what are you going to implement from what Janhendrik has shared with us?
I made a note here about my takeaway of this morning's conversation, and I want to look at blaming is laming a little bit, but blaming is blaming might also be a warning light. When blame starts showing up in a business or in your life or wherever, it often means the system is under pressure or it's breaking down. And then add motion without progress to that whirlpool, you find yourself with overworked people and unclear responsibility, and the burnout is not far behind. So that is my takeaway. Maybe when blaming starts showing up, you need to kind of find the underlying problem and fix it.
Thank you, Mana. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn, from your perspective, what is your takeaway?
Besides the planning and purpose, I'm all about leadership as well. And there's a particular statement that I believe is probably good for the show. That is, leadership has very little to do with what you do, and it's fundamentally about becoming who you are. And that's the takeaway for me. So thank you very much, JH. Brilliant. Definitely we'll get together in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Let's go to Russell. What is your takeaway from today, Russell?
Thanks, David. I think between Glenn and Janhendrik, you guys came up with the phrase purpose before strategy. And I think that's my biggest takeaway. I see now where it's kind of not a flaw, but where our focus a lot is on strategy. In business, I'm a very black and white type of person. But sometimes I think the purpose of what you're wanting to accomplish should be first and foremost front of mind before you implement a strategy. And I tend to reverse that. I think it's that's my takeaway for the day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Russell. Let's go to Wilhelm. Wilhelm, what's your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, well, I think protect client promise. It's so important to protect what you promise people and to make sure you keep your promises, because that leads to trust.
Oh, yes. Accountability. I love it. Now, from my point of view and my perspective, I think what you said is give yourself permission to be a leader. And I think that's something that stood out for me, because often you stand back and you wait for others to lead and you become a follower. And why not become the leader yourself? Give yourself the permission to do that. And then people will follow you. And I love that. I think that's really important. I'd like to just thank all those that have commented. Karen, Tian, thank you very much. There are a few others. Rita, Rensha, thank you very much. Sakani, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your comments. I'm not sure who the LinkedIn user was, but thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Janhendrik will go along and look at the comments, and he will award a prize to one of you that have commented. So thanks for that. Janhendrik, over to you. Can you give us a wrap up and what your biggest takeaway is today, and what your biggest lesson that you can leave with us so that we can implement it?
David, I think there are two things that I would love to leave you with. One is for the person, and one is for the business. And let's start with the person. If you are carrying that sentence, I should be further, know that the sentence is not evidence of that you are failing. It's evidence that you're the kind of person who cares enough about your potential to fill the gap. And the reality is, the question isn't whether you should be further. The question is whether you are moving. And if you're moving, you're already rising. And then for the business, Start with who you are, not what you sell. Identity before expression. If you can't explain in one sentence what your business means to the market, not what it does, but what it means, that's where the work begins. And that is what we're passionate about from a ReIMAGINE point of view, to answer that question. Make sure you understand what your business means to the market.
Sure, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. So, first of all, I'd just like to thank Janhendrik for his time, for coming to the show. There will be a newsletter that will sum up what we've discussed today. Please go and subscribe to Future Forward. And then, next year we're going to have another very exciting event. Come and have a look, join the membership program. It's also on my status. You can see my WhatsApp there. You can follow that and then apply on the status for the actual membership application. It's free, and we're here to actually give back. Vision 2026 was born on the basis of actually a mentoring program and to give back to you so that you can actually learn from the expertise of others so that you can have a better life and that you improve your own standing in this world that we live in, this upside down world that we live in. So thanks everyone. Thanks Mana, thanks Glenn, thanks Russell, thanks Valena, thanks to all our users and all audience, and thanks especially to Janhendrik for your wisdom today. Thank you. Stay on. There's a little video that will play, and then I'm just asking the host and the guests to stay on right to the end. Thank you. Bye for now. Have a fantastic week. Bye.
Cybercrime is one of the